Okay, so we're going to talk about the second theme. We talked about the first theme, which was globalization, and now we're going to talk about the second theme, which is sustainability. So, sustainability, what is it? So, it was defined in 1987 by the World Commission on Environment and Development. The official definition of sustainability is to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. So that is the official definition. But then the issue becomes who determines what the need is, right? So what are the needs that we have now that we can do without define the present? So let's look at kind of a historical perspective on this. So there is the expansionist view. So this began during the Industrial Revolution, which happened in England. If we are going to have a little brief bit of a history lesson here. So in terms of development and expansionism, up until the Industrial Revolution in England, it was pretty slow. There was kind of a piece, and then it kind of exploded going forward. And in the 18th century, we start getting factories and railways and roads and steamships. And these new machines that meant products could be made cheaper and faster. And at the same time, we also get a movement from the rural farming, traditional farming, looking after yourself, to these booming cities where people begin to lose contact with the land and the knowledge, and the respect for nature diminished over time and during this particular industrial explosion. And Europeans were extremely destructive to their own lands. They very quickly ran out of their own supplies, so they actually started expanding out from their country, specifically England. As we know, England is actually an island and it's relatively small, and the population grew too fast to support it. So what they had to do is they had to look outside. So they went overseas, specifically to North America, Canada, United States, what it is, and they started taking those resources because we're a giant piece of land and we have tons and tons of resources. And because we had all these resources and because the land seemed so large, they got this impression that there was a limitless natural resources in space. So they could just do what they wanted with zero consequence, which of course we know now, poor idea, but at the time it seemed like there was no consequences to expansion. So they kept going. And then in the late 18th century, there was the reaction to the destruction of the environment because they started realizing that this colonial expansion was not limitless. There was a limit. There was a the colonies that they came into had emotional and spiritual relationships that bind humans and the environment together. We saw this with the Aboriginal peoples in North America, as well as the other colonies. They had a symbiotic relationship to the land. They took only what they needed, whereas the English coming in to colonize took more than they needed and far more than they needed. And it wasn't until 1872 where you get these national parks set up when they realized to not exploit the land and to sell it, to start preserving some of this land that they were tearing up, which was not so good. So the growth of modern environmentalism, and when we see environmentalism today, you probably have a very specific view of it, but it actually, after World War II and the population boom in the 1950s and the expansion of industrialization, have put a huge pressure on land and resources that we've seen. And we've also got brand new forms of pollution, as chemical and other industries expanded. The rise of nuclear power has made a lot of people very iffy. Chemical or oil spills, air pollution, the use of pesticides hurting the environment are all part of it as well. The very first Earth Day came in 1970, and Canada developed the Department of Environment in 1971 to try and combat and realize some of these things were happening, and then of course, which has led to the growth and the understanding of climate change today. So, different views of our world today. So there are some different takes on how this is. There's the spaceship Earth concept that Earth is finite and fragile. It's limited resources, and we're too much population to support the current life that we have on the planet. And this is what we call the danger zone concept. And then the Gaia hypothesis is that the Earth is a dynamic, self-regulating organism, and that through evolution, living organisms have regulated the amount of carbon dioxide and other gases, and that we will kind of balance itself out again, and we will survive naturally from this. So this is kind of the two big ones that we have in terms of looking at the Earth. Two very different perspectives. Danger, and things will right themselves out eventually. There's the Limits to Growth Thesis Club of Rome, predicting what might happen if current growth trends continue. These experts state the premise that there are limits to population growth. While renewable resources like soil and air can be overused or damaged, we are basically a big dodo, and the dodo refers to the dodo bird, which went extinct many, many years ago. The carrying capacity is the maximum number of people that we can sustain on Earth's resources, and we are far beyond carrying capacity at the moment in terms of population. And the cornucopian thesis, technological advances will develop that will allow us to survive. So it'll be okay, new ideas will save us. So, I mean, in terms of if we look at the COVID-19 right now, a lot of people would argue that this is the Earth rebalancing itself, potentially. So resource and resources use. So all materials and components of the environment taken together are called a total stock. So the total stock includes energy, or organisms, non-living materials. Any part of this that becomes useful is called a resource. Resources, we have natural and man-made. Natural is water, air, earth that we have, and then human-made, of course, is like labor and technology, or landscapes and ecosystems in terms of their aesthetic quality. Renewable resources are infinite, and that as long as we need them, we'll have them. And then non-renewable, obviously, is once they're used, they're done. For example, fossil fuels, gas, nuclear fuels, that type of thing. So it's pretty. This should be review from geography, if you remember geography. See, so the need for sustainable development. So strategy set out to follow three objectives: the maintenance of essential ecological process, sustainable use of resource, and the preservation of genetic diversity. All right, the three ideas in order to be sustainable. So these are the major ideas right here in order to be considered sustainable use. Okay, that's it for sustainability. That's it for this lecture, and that's it for the second major theme. So our two major themes are globalization and sustainability. Make sure you know, make sure you understand, and we'll see you guys in the next lecture.